All right, now we're gonna work on a double crust apple pie. So that means there's a crust on the bottom of the pie, obviously, but then a crust on the top. It makes a really beautiful presentation. It's a classic apple pie that people go crazy for. All right, let's start assembling the pie crust. So we've got some regular all-purpose flour, and then a little bit of sugar, and a little bit of salt as well. And I'll just process that just for 1 second, just to mix everything up. Now, we're gonna add the butter, and it has to be really, really cold. So when I make a pie crust, I keep it in the refrigerator until right when I'm about to put the ingredients all together. That's a little cube of butter, just I don't know, ½ cube. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you should really make sure that you cube it because you can't put in huge chunks of butter. But remember, it has to be cold. That's essential. All right, you can dump it all in the food processor. And remember, pulse this. And what you're looking for the butter to get cut up until it's about pea-sized, is what they always say. Pea-sized chunks of butter. And basically what happens is the blades of the food processor cut the butter up, and then that exposed butter gets covered with flour. And that's how you get a flaky crust. All right, it's where I want it to be. Now, I'm just gonna add a little bit of ice water. Now, this also needs to be cold, but it's got the ice cubes in it. So that water is nice and cold. I'm just gonna start. You wanna do this by eye. I think I asked for about 3 to 5 tablespoons, but process it a little bit, and you'll get used to what you're looking for. The butter will start coming together. The crust will start to climb up the side of the mixer, a little bit at a time. I'm just gonna check it. Yeah, that's just about right. That's where I want it to be. So it's gonna come together. If you squeeze it, it'll come together and hold its shape, but it's still sort of crumbly inside the mixer. All right, I'm gonna plop it out onto my work surface. Just be careful of the blade. All right, just sort of spread it out a little bit. Mash it out, it gives a little bit more flakiness to the crust. That's called fraisage, if you want to get fancy. And you want these to be 2 even pie crusts. You can get a scale out if you want to be exact, but if you're pretty close, I think you'll be happy with the result. Usually, if one's a little bit bigger than the other, I will use that as the bottom crust. And there you go, 2 nice pie crusts. So I'm going to wrap those up in plastic wrap and stick them in the refrigerator for about 20 minutes or a half hour to let them cool and firm up a little bit before I roll them out to make the crusts. First, we're going to start by peeling and coring the apples and then slicing them into small chunks. I'm going to use a paring knife to do this. You can use a vegetable peeler if you want. That works pretty well. A lot of people like that. They even make these awesome machines that will peel and core an apple yourself. I don't tend to use them because we do a lot of it, and it just takes a little bit more of the skin off than I like. But whatever it takes to make an apple pie, you should do it. But I'll take off all the peel. You know, if you leave a little tiny chunk of peel on there, no one's gonna complain, and maybe they even think, wow, that's really an apple pie if there's a tiny piece of peel. So don't sweat it too much. Now I'm gonna slice the apple in half, and I'm gonna use a melon baller. I'm gonna use a melon baller to take out the center. It's just a little trick. It helps make this process go fast. If you don't have a melon baller, don't go out and get one. But it's a kind of a nice little thing to make it go quickly. Okay, so now I've taken all the peel and the core out. Got a little apple. I'm just gonna cut it into some chunks. Right now I'm using a blend of apples. I've got Golden Delicious, I've got Granny Smith, and I've got an Empire apple. Really depends on what you can get and what time of year it is. But I like to use a variety of apples in my pies. 3 or 4 types is ideal. You're gonna get different textures. Some will be sweet, some will be tart. They'll bake up differently. So when you bite into the finished product, the pie, there will be some pieces that are more like a chunky apple, and some will almost dissolve and just give up a lot of sweetness and a lot of sugar into the pie. So I've got my apples. Now I'm gonna add a little bit of sugar. I'm gonna add a little bit of salt. And this is some cinnamon and a touch of nutmeg. It makes a nice addition. I'm gonna throw a little bit of lemon zest in there. Not a ton, but a little bit. You don't want the chunks to be too big. I'm also gonna give a squeeze of lemon juice in there. I like to juice my lemon into a separate bowl, just so I can keep some of those seeds out of the pie. There's one in there. All right, and that's just a little bit. Now you're adding the sugar and the lemon juice. Those are going to combine and they'll start breaking down the apple. It will make the apple pie thick. The filling will thicken up because of the pectin. And the lemon juice and the lemon zest and the sugar all help break down the apple and release that pectin. And so we'll combine all this, we'll mix it up with the rubber spatula, and then I'm gonna let it sit for a few minutes, probably 5-10 minutes, not too much longer than that, but you'll see that there's a lot of liquid at the bottom of the bowl, and that's delicious, and you should use that, definitely put it in the pie. So let's let that rest for 10 minutes, and we'll start rolling out the pie crust and getting ready to assemble the pie. All right, let's roll out these apple pie crusts and start assembling the pie so we can get it in the oven. I'm going to take my rolling pin, and first I'm going to tap pretty forcefully on the pie crust, and I'll rotate the crust every once in a while. That kind of flattens out the bottom, it gets it in a uniform shape, and it starts the rounding process off on the right foot. I'll do a little flour on the cutting board. I like to use a nice wooden surface or a cutting board so that the pie crust doesn't stick to any cracks in the tile or something like that if you're using that. So you want to make sure that there's enough flour that the crust is not going to stick to your rolling pin. And when I'm rolling it out, I'm just really rolling in the center third of the pie crust. Just right here, just right there. And I roll it, and then I rotate, and I roll it, and I rotate. If I start to see the crust getting out of shape, I'm going to stop for a second, and I just sort of use my hands to reshape it. I want to make sure it's in a nice circle. If you get a crack, don't worry about it. You know, we can fill that crack once it goes into the pie pan. But just keep rolling in the center third of the crust and rotating. It's looking pretty good. I can feel it. It's got a nice round, flat feel to it. It's the right size. Okay, I'm going to do this quickly, but it's really easy. You can do this without a problem. Everything's a little bit covered with flour. I'm going to start rolling it up on my pin. And it goes over. There's 2 layers under there. And then just put the crust on the edge of the cake, the edge of the pie pan, and then roll it out. And once you've done this a couple times, you can be a lot more confident in it. So I'm not going to trim anything off of this right now. This one's ready to go. Just going to roll it over a little bit. I'm going to make sure that the crust is tucked into the corners of every part of the pan, and I'm going to set that aside. This second one, I'm going to repeat the same process. This will be the top of the pie. I've got that nice, ready to go. This one has started to melt a little bit in the time that I was rolling out that first pie. So I want to work quickly. If it starts to really get soft and warm, stick it back in the refrigerator, go take a break, check your emails, whatever you got to do. I've got a crack in the middle right there. Again, don't let that stress you out. I'm going to fix that in 1 second, but I'm just about where I want to be in terms of the diameter of the crust. I'm going to re-round it a little bit here, but it's looking pretty good here. I'm pretty happy with this, the way it's looking. See that crust came together? If you make homemade pie crust and someone complains that there's a crack on the top of your pie, you can kick them out or just not give them a piece of pie. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to roll it up. I'm going to roll it out right here on my cookie sheet. And now I'm going to stick both of these in the fridge for a few minutes so they can firm up just a little bit while I assemble all the ingredients and get ready to put that pie in the oven. Okay, let's grab the apple pie crust bottom out of the fridge. It's had a few minutes to set up now, so that's going to be a little bit more durable. We can work with it. We can put the apple filling in it with a little more confidence. I'm going to take a pair of scissors and trim the edge just a little bit, wherever I think it's a little bit too long. I want a little bit hanging over. That doesn't bug me. And you don't want to trim too much, but if there's a lot of excess, it's going to get in the way as you're trying to put that top crust on there. Okay, so that's ready to go. I've got my apples. Now they've been steeping for a few minutes, so there's a little bit of nice liquid that's come out of there. Sometimes it gives off a lot of juice. I'll hold back a little bit of that juice just because the final pie might get a little bit runny. But that looks about right. It's a mound of apples. Looks really good. Now, let's go and get that second crust out of the fridge and top it and then finish with a little decorative edge. So at this point, you can really handle this crust okay. You could roll it up if you're a little bit afraid, but you're gonna do okay. Don't worry about that crack, it'll be fine. Don't get nervous about it. I'm going to trim a little bit if I see any really long pieces, but this is pretty nice. So what I'm going to do is start tucking this under. You tuck the top crust underneath the bottom crust, and I'm sealing it. I am pinching it a little bit with my fingers. Tucking it under, it seals the side, and then I'm going to crimp the edge for a little decorative edge on this pie. And you'll get this. It's really, really easy. And at this point, I just want to round it a little bit, make sure my filling is all nice and tight. I'm going to get a little bit of flour on my hands, and I'm just going to make this basic motion. Boop, 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 all around the pie. It's really simple. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. If it starts sticking, just give yourself a little bit more flour. Okay, right now I'm going to get a little bit of milk wash. You can use an egg wash, a little egg white wash. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to use milk. You need to put something sort of liquidy on top of the pie so the sugar will stick to it, and also the fat in the milk or the eggs is going to give the pie a rich dark brown color. So milk is fine. Okay, I've got my milk, a little sugar, and my pastry brush. Again, you don't want a lot, it's just a little bit. You want to brush it on there. But you want to try to avoid as big puddles of milk. That's not what you're going for. It's just a really thin layer. So again, I've got a little crack in the middle of the pie, but it's not anything to worry about. I'm just going to use it as part of my venting. So I'm going to do 3 slices with my knife. All right, that pie is ready to go. We're going to stick it in the oven. It's going to bake for a long time and just let it do its thing. It'll darken and you'll see some bubbles forming in the vents, and that's how you know it's going to be done. But let's stick it in the oven and we'll look at that in a few minutes. Awesome. So I think that apple pie is just about done. I can actually smell the aroma of the apple pie. That's actually a really good way to tell that it's getting to be done. I'm going to take it out, show you a few pointers. Okay, it's hot. That's a hot oven. Okay, so I've got a really nice golden color. I can see a few of the bubbles starting to come through the cracks in the crust and the air vents. So I know that this pie is done. Those little bubbles are key things to look for as you are trying to see if the pie is done. But again, look, there was a crack in here when we put it in the oven. Now it's just really attractive air vents. That is a classic apple pie. I think you're going to really love that crust. So when you take the pie out of the oven, it should have a nice golden hue. It's going to look rich and caramely. That's how you know it's fully baked, and that's how you know the crust is going to be flaky and really flavorful. If it's too pale, you're going to have a gummy pie, and the crust won't be have that flakiness that you're really looking for in an apple pie. So it should look nice and brown and golden, and there you go, classic apple pie.